guys, right. Now in this video we will see unit part 3 that we are studying social work with the individuals and the groups. In the two parts, revision parts. Now we will see the third part. Okay, right. So in this third part we are going to study or see the application of casework, okay, and ethical issues in social work. These are the two major aspects that we are going to cover in this revision. Okay, so first we will see application of casework. Okay, the role of case worker in various settings, you have to understand this is the major important component. We apply the social casework concept in various settings, like taking care of children, taking care of women, taking care of differently able people, taking care of elderly, okay, then taking care of people in conflict with law. Okay, so in these areas you have to understand the role of a case worker or a social worker. Okay, so first and foremost we will understand the role of a case worker in healthcare and mental health settings, which is an important area for social work practitioner. Okay, so what are the roles? The caseworker has to assist the patients in adjusting to illness, chronic conditions, or terminal diagnosis. Okay, this is the role of social worker here. They have to assist the patients in settling in these various aspects. Then second aspect is they have to provide counseling for emotional trauma such as post-operative depression or psychiatric crisis. Okay, this is these are the general conditions the patients will go into once they have illness and they have undergone surgeries. Okay, so the social worker has to provide the counseling for these things. Okay, the next the social worker or case worker has to facilitate access to rehabilitation services. Okay, rehabilitation is very important after a traumatic incident. Okay, right. Then mental health institutions, they have to facilitate access to these institutions also. And formally the caseworker has to support the networks. Okay, then one example we will see. We see a case worker. Example, a case worker helps a cancer patient access government financed palliative care. Palliative care is the care which is given for the patient, cancer patient, to reduce the pain that is causing out of the graves of cancer. Okay, that is the meaning of palliative care. And so role of the social worker here is also to mobilize emotional support through community networks. Okay, so this is how a case worker supports a cancer patient. Right? This is the role of the case worker in health and mental setting. Next, in schools and educational settings, here also the case worker plays very important role. Right. Here, the roles are identifying and addressing learning difficulties, especially the differently able children have any difficulties. The caseworker has to identify them, and truancy and bullying. Okay, so if children are facing these problems like truancy or bullying by the more, what should I say, assertive students or stronger students than the regular students, they generally resort to bullying and teasing. So the social worker has to address these aspects also. Then caseworker has to promote inclusive education for all students with disabilities or behavioral challenges. You see, integration education is very important aspect. We actually did not support we did not separate the students based on exclusion criteria, like they belong to certain category or certain community or certain caste or certain religion, or if they have any behavioral challenges. Only we have to provide a separate environment, assisted educational environment, when the children are actually need them. Okay, they need a different kind of education. Otherwise, as far as possible, we try and promote inclusive education for different kinds of students who are suffering because of disabilities or behavioral challenges. Okay. Then we also have to, or the social worker or case worker has to collaborate with the teachers and parents to formulate individualized educational policies, especially for the students whose learning ability is a little bit different than the regular students, or they are unable to cope up with the regular classes. For these students, the individualized education plans have to be prepared. Okay. Example, we can see an example here. A school social worker intervenes when a child shows signs of anxiety. Okay, the child is showing anxiety due to domestic violence and facilitates for this child, the caseworker facilitates counseling and parental support mechanisms. This is how the caseworker plays his or her role in the educational settings. Okay. Next, in the family and the child welfare agencies, what is the role of the caseworker here? The caseworker has to work with the children facing neglect, okay, abuse or custodial conflict. These are the issues the caseworker has to find out and work with. And the caseworker has to facilitate family reintegration, which is very, very important. Foster care, if the child is not once again reintegrated with the family, the child will be put under the care and custody of another family, suitable family, then that you will call it as foster care. Or the caseworker has to look for finally adopted procedures. Means the probable parents, the or probable adopters, the social care worker has to look for. Okay. Example, here we see the example. We say care worker creates a neglected child's case file and coordinates with the child welfare committee to ensure appropriate shelter for the child and psychological support. This is how you can understand the social worker or case worker's role in the family and welfare agencies. Okay. Right. Another thing the case worker does is advocate for child protection through statutory mechanisms like juvenile justice system. Okay. Then we have a separate law and a body for the protection of the children also, National Commission for Protection of Children's Rights. That the caseworker can take the help of that body also. Then correctional and legal settings, here also the caseworker plays an important role. Here the caseworker has to offer pre-release counseling before the person in conflict with the law is being released once again into the society after serving the prison sentence. Then skill training, some skill has to be provided to that person so that the person can take up certain job after the release. Then rehabilitation planning for offenders. Okay, this is the social worker or case worker. Apart from that, the case worker has to provide emotional support to juvenile delinquents. Okay, means the children below the age of 18 years, juveniles who were in conflict with the law. Okay, and caseworker has to help restructure their behavioral patterns even if they are in correctional home or they have been released out of this correctional home. Okay, then the caseworker has to assist the clients in accessing legal aid, very, very important, bail procedures and parole hearings. Here also the people in conflict with law or offenders or perceived criminals, they require assistance and social worker has to provide law support. Example, we will see. Example, juvenile in conflict with law receives counseling under the JJ Act, that is Juvenile Justice Act of 2015. This is the latest JJ Act. Right. How this happens with the caseworker facilitating reintegration with the family and school. Okay. This is how the caseworker can help here. Then another important setting is geriatrics and community-based setting. Geriatrics is, you know very well, this is the taking care of elderly people. Okay, what is the role of the social worker here? He or she has to address issues related to isolation of the elderly people, abuse of elderly people, or neglect by their guardians or children, okay, especially to the elderly people. Then the social worker or case worker has to connect them with the social pensions so that they can have some sort of security for the rest of their life. Assist health care. You see, health issue is another big problem for the elderly. Okay, they will be facing several health related aspects. So the case worker has to assist with health care and senior support. Senior citizen support groups. Okay, there are several senior support groups are there, and the case worker has to try and assimilate this individual elderly person with the senior citizen support groups. Okay, then the case worker also have to conduct a regular home visits. Then he has to do the psychological assessments and follow-up services. Okay. Example, we have to understand the role of a case worker here. A case worker helps an abandoned elderly woman apply for pension and links her with a local daycare center for senior citizens. Okay, this is how a social worker or case worker can help the elderly person. Okay. Then we will see case example, further example. We will see with some illustration. Okay. First one is in a child abuse case, what the social worker or case worker can do. The case worker ensures immediate safety by arranging for temporary shelter for the child who has underwent abuse, then initiates trauma counseling and coordinates legal redress under the POCSO provisions. Under the POCSO Act, prevention of sexual harassment or sexual offences against the children. Okay, right. POCSO is, if you want a full abbreviation or reform, Prevention of Protection of Children from Sexual Abuse Act. Okay, very stringent act. It punishes, provisions are very stringent so that they can protect the children from sexual abuse. Okay. Then second case, in a mental illness case, what the social worker or case worker can do. The case worker supports both client and the family through psycho-education, medication follow-up, and long-term home-based care. Okay, this is how a case worker helps this family. Then in a substance abuse cases where people are resorting to drugs. Okay, people are consuming drugs and facing problems. Okay, here the social worker or case worker conducts motivational interviewing and arranges for admission in a certified de-addiction center. Okay. Then in a domestic violence case, what is the role of the case worker or social worker? Here the social worker supports the survivor through crisis counseling. Okay. Then legal assistance to sever the relations with the in-laws, then husband and in-laws or wife or in-laws, because domestic violence is majorly targeted against the women. In few cases, the men are also victims of domestic violence. Okay, right. So it is general neutral. We have to understand. Then shelter admission and vocational rehabilitation, so that the victim and now the survivor can start a new livelihood for him or her. Then in the case of elderly neglect, what a social worker can do? Here the social worker ensures access to social security schemes like pension scheme, etc. Then healthcare services and community-based daily engagement activities, so that the elderly person is at least he has some sort of community and connection with other people. Right? Then second part of this video or revision summary video, that is ethical dilemmas in casework practice. Several times you face dilemma, or the case worker or social worker faces dilemma that whether whatever the thing or act they are doing. Maybe it may be, knowing about the person or interviewing the person, interacting with the person, establishing a bond, and designing a intervention and executing that intervention, etc. In all these stages, we have seen in the previous classes the stages or steps involved in social casework or casework practice. So there are several ethical dilemmas. What is the meaning of an ethical dilemma? You have two choices or more than one choice. Which one you have to choose? There is conflict between your personal aspects or personal interests, and when you are interacting with the client or working with the client, some issues will arise. Okay, in those issues you have to take the appropriate choice, and you have to go forward. So whatever the conflicts you will be having or number of choices you will be having, those are called as ethical dilemmas. The first one is breach of confidentiality. We have in previous classes understood confidentiality is one of the important features of the casework, social casework. Sometimes there may be a breach of confidentiality, or social worker or caseworker may face with a dilemma of whether he or she has to reveal the identity of the and personal details of the client or not. Okay, so this arises when a client's disclosure must be shared with authorities to prevent harm, as in cases of child abuse and suicidal ideation. Okay, so in these extreme cases are very what should I say, abnormal, if I may have to call it, or serious issues. The principle of the social casework is generally the details shared by the client to the social worker, they shall not be revealed. But because revealing will also protect the victim or the client, sometimes the social worker or case worker might have to share these details with the authorities so that the client can be protected. But still it is an ethical dilemma whether to reveal that confidential things or not to reveal. Okay. Then second dilemma the person or case worker will be facing is self-determination versus beneficence. Okay, so what is the meaning of this one? When a client refuses treatment that the worker considers beneficial for the client, okay, such as medication, it means taking medicines or administering medicines or medication, non-compliance in psychiatric disorders. This is also a dilemma for generally how an intervention like treatment or anything else will take place. Of course, the social worker will suggest this, but it is the final decision of the client to whether to accept that or reject that. Okay, both have to work. So here, the social worker faces a dilemma where the client is declining, though that is for the benefit or benefit of the client. Then third dilemma the social worker or case worker will be facing is involuntary treatment. What is it? When legal mandates require institutionalization or rehabilitation against the client's will. Okay, client is not agreeing to undergo rehabilitation or get admission in an institution, maybe a care center, maybe a hospital, maybe a correctional center, but still the case worker has face a dilemma that he has to, against the will of the client, he or she has to send to be sent to an institution. Okay, then dual responsibilities, which is very important dilemma. Already a question is there on dual responsibility. What is this dual responsibility of the case worker? When a case worker is asked to help someone with whom they have a prior or personal relationship, potentially affecting the impartiality. Okay, so if the case worker is not knowing the client before, then there are greater chances of the the case worker working with any fear or favor, or with there is a chance of the case worker acting with impartiality. But when the case worker knows the client, then that will come into dual relationship. The case worker has a relationship as the social worker, and he has also a personal relationship. Okay, this is the dilemma of dual relationships. Then other dilemma is cultural, religious beliefs versus legal norms. This is also a very difficult area for the case worker to navigate through. You see, when customary practices like child marriage, giving dowry, etc., many other practices are there. Of course, they are in conflict with the statutory provisions and the human rights, but which one the client or how the caseworker has to navigate through these challenges, that is also a dilemma for the caseworker. Okay. Then, to break this dilemma and to make the most appropriate decision, you remember there is no 100% decision, 100% correct decision. The dilemma here is to choose from two or more correct decisions only or correct paths only. So how the caseworker has to choose it? He has to choose it where the negative consequences are less and the positive consequences are more. The caseworker has to evaluate and he has to choose the path when he or she is facing ethical crime. For that, a proper ethical decision-making framework has been provided to help the caseworkers or social workers. So we will understand it step by step. So in step 1, what the social worker or caseworker has to do, he or she has to identify the nature of the dilemma, what type of dilemma it is, he has to identify the nature, then clearly define the values or rights that are in conflict with the issue. Okay, first he has to delineate the values and the rights that are in conflict here. Okay, right. Culture versus law. One thing we have seen. Okay, personal interest versus professional interest. That we have seen. Okay, like this we have to evaluate the values and rights that are there in conflict. This is the stage. This is what you have to do in stage 1. Then in stage 2 or step 2, what the caseworker has to do, he or she has to consult a professional consult the professional ethical codes that are already there prescribed, and also refer to documents such as the National Association of Social Workers Code of Ethics or the NCSW India guidelines. Okay, so this is how he has to consult and see, search for the values and rights that are in conflict. Okay, then in step 3, the caseworker has to generate possible course of action. Okay, explore all feasible alternatives before choosing that particular path. And their implications. Like I have told, the caseworker has to evaluate both positives and the negatives that he or she is taking or going to take. We have to evaluate them thoroughly, and we have to choose the option which has more positive consequences and which has less negative consequences. Okay. However, in step 4, the caseworker has to seek the supervision or peer consultation, means co-workers. Okay, then he or she has to engage in reflective dialogue with the senior professionals, and they may show some direction as to what has to be done. Okay, then in the final step 5, the caseworker has to make an informed decision. What is the meaning of informed decision? Decision supported by facts. Okay, or with full information. That is the meaning of informed decision. And document it. Okay, choose the path that upholds the dignity, rights and the welfare of the client while fulfilling legal and institutional responsibilities. This is how the caseworker has to make a decision when ethical dilemma is there. Okay, right. So once again, briefly, we will revise what we have studied until now. You see, the social case workers play diverse and critical roles across various environmental settings or various settings like health, education, family, legal and community settings. The application of theoretical principles requires adaptability, cultural sensitivity and interdisciplinary approach. Then other takeaways, ethical dilemmas are inherent in casework and they require well-considered responses guided by professional standards and client rights. Okay, upholding the values of confidentiality. Okay, confidentiality, autonomy, dignity, and justice is the central to responsible social case practice. Okay, these are the important takeaways from this discussion. Right. In the next video, we will see some other aspects. So this is it for today. Until next time, have a good day. See you next time.